Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome back to Washer Dryer Part 9? Part 2 of 3, Episode 9? Whatever. Let's try a second take of that. Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome back to Washer Dryer Freezeezy Peak Part 2. Now, some of you might remember that I had intended to get all 3 Freezeezy Peak episodes out before Christmas. And those of you who were lucky enough to get calendars from Santa Claus are probably acutely aware that this episode going up today did in fact miss the mark. And I do apologise for that. I had hoped to manage to get them all done, but unfortunately reality kicked in, and it got to the point that I could either polish up the holiday special or rush out a sloppy version of the holiday special and a sloppy version of Washer Dryer, and I figured since the Very Grim and Grin Christmas is at this point somewhat of a Christmas tradition, I should probably put my time and effort into that one. And so I suppose crack out any leftover eggnog, but make sure to check the expiration date, and sit back and relax for the second part of Freezeezy Peak, which is definitely late, but hey, it's still earlier than part 3. But I digress. As you would have seen during this introduction, while I was speaking over top of it, I've just learned how to do the beak attack while airborne, and I've just failed in using it against one of those dastardly snowmen. But as they always say, if at first you don't succeed, then fly again. See that it's wordplay because the actual saying is try again. Isn't that witty of me? And it's an awful good thing that I've acknowledged that saying quite early on in this process, because I'm rather garbage when it comes to flying in Banjo-Kazooie, and even worse when it comes to aiming my beak buster. But instead of moping about it, I decided to instead make it look like I totally meant to do it, and rather than accidentally throwing myself headfirst in the foot of a snowman, I was just in quite the hurry to pick up those music notes. And while doing so, I am of course still avoiding all mumbo-jumbo tokens to test out whether it's really true that while in washer-dryer mode, you don't actually need any mumbo-jumbo tokens in order to transform. I still have too many for this level, but I think in the next one, I'll probably be under the limit, so we'll actually be able to get a ruling on that. And of course, as I go, I collect these January presents, even though that I'm fairly certain that I won't be able to do anything with them, as to deliver them to Boggy's children, you need to have the throwing animation, which, as we've learned from Treasure Trove Cove and Mumbo's Mountain, the washer dryer simply does not have. So why collect them anyway, Grim, you might well intelligently ponder while stroking your beard? Well, quite simply, because worst case scenario, if I can't give them to the children, I get to keep them myself, which means I get a bunch of presents. So it's really a win-win situation. Speaking of a win-win, now that we're back in the air and once more back on track, we finally had our first victory against Frosty, who is now well and truly dead. One snowman down, several more to go. And as we go to continue on with the snowman massacre, we round the corner, find the next site, line it up but evidently not quite well enough, shoot twice and miss twice, and find ourselves once more grounded. Having taken a little bit of damage from my repeated failure, and having learnt from my repeated failure to expect more failure, I decided that before I took to the skies again, I should probably replenish some health. After all, the most annoying thing would be to fall out of the sky, die, and have to start collecting all of the collectibles again, because being in the Nintendo 64 version, if you die, you have to collect all the music notes again, and you have to kill all of the Frosties again, which, at the moment, isn't a huge problem because only one of them's dead. And with my health replenished in a not dissimilar fashion to drinking a cold glass of lemonade on a hot summer's day, which, by the way, it currently is over here in the land down under, a steamy 32 degrees Celsius, making it even funnier to me that I'm not only doing a Christmas special after Christmas, but also that I'm playing a winter-themed map in the heat of summer. But I once more digress. Following a long trudge back to the launch pad, it's time for a quick in-flight check, and then we're once more in the air again, to take down, or at least attempt to take down, some more snowmans, again. Before people treat my extreme and consistent inability to aim while airborne in this video too harshly, I'd like to point out that being a washer-dryer, my dimensions are considerably different than that of Banjo-Kazooie, and so usually while you would aim by judging how Banjo and Kazooie were facing while airborne, you can't exactly rely on the exact same tells, and so I'm essentially having to learn to aim again from scratch. I swear I'm at least slightly better at it when I'm playing the game regularly. And I think this is evident from my recent hat-trick of hat-hammering heroics, as it clearly shows that practice makes perfect, and I just had to get used to doing it as a washer-dryer, rather than that of a bear and a bird. And with that, much like the first rays of spring acting as an avenging sword and sludgifying the soldiers of sleet, the last of the snowmen are dead, and their golden jiggy revealed. Which means, unfortunately, now that I've finally got the hang of flying, it's time to give it up and head back to the ground side to do some ground stuff, mainly consisting of things to do on the ground. The first of which being of course to ground pound the Grunty switch in order to reveal yet another overworld Jiggy. However, unfortunately the Jiggy revealed is another one that I think is probably impossible to get as a washer dryer, as in order to get to the flight pad you need to use the sand shoes, and the sand shoes of course require an animation that the washer dryer is sorely deprived of due to it not having legs. Although not all hope is lost, someone has in the comments suggested a fix to it, which I'll try out and of course credit once we get to the problem. But before we do, I'd like to first briefly point out how funny it is that all the computer-controlled players still freak out about a bear being nearby. It's just so wonderfully strange watching a walrus point at a washing machine and yell, "Oh no, a bear!" And it kinda makes me want to see a remake of The Revenant in which the bear is replaced with a washing machine, or even funnier if the bear remains a bear, but you replace Leonardo DiCaprio with a washing machine. I mean, overall, I think most remakes and reboots are entirely unnecessary, but that's one I could definitely get behind. But until Hollywood catches up with my visionary ideas, it's time to make like King Kong climbing up the Empire State Building and scale this here big old giant snowman via his Gryffindor scarf. Speaking of which, does anyone else find it somewhat morbid that snowmen always seem to dress warmly? I mean, the warmth will literally kill them, and yet you'll often see snowmen wearing scarves and gloves and whatnot. It just seems somewhat dark to me. I've always really enjoyed this part of the level and found it probably a lot more clever than it actually is, that you've got the red feathers placed on the red parts of the scarf and the golden music notes placed on the yellow parts, and I also really just love the sound effects as you pick up each one after the other. It's overall a wonderful piece of level design which, while not being difficult or challenging in any way at all, is just somehow pleasing. And while everything's going so swimmingly, why not jump over to a broom to sweep up a blue Jinjo, bringing our number of Jinjos so far in this level to a whopping 2. And as we're now almost at the very top of the snowman, there is essentially 2 Jiggies that are almost entirely guaranteed to us, one on the very top of the snowman and one in its pipe, that as long as nothing goes wrong are as good as mine. And we might as well go for the first one first, because it makes sense, so after a quick hop and a jump, we're on the pipe, and we're dropping down into the pipe for our second Jiggy in the map so far. Also, I was going to point out that a snowman smoking was just as silly as him wearing a scarf, because smoking would melt him, but I suppose smoking's bad for you anyway, so I guess we'll let that one slide. Which means that it's time for just one more hop up onto the snowman's nose to collect yet another present and make our way carefully over the launch pad. Truly, at this point, nothing can go wrong. You know, except maybe sneezing, and in doing so, accidentally hitting the wrong button on the controller.